8 o'clock in the morning here,
Yep.
and it's 85 degrees. There's a heat index of 112,
Oh man.
and
Hey,
it is humid as shit, man.
so I'm trying to stream to YouTube.
And
Hey,
it is.
it is. It's working. Sweet. All right. Well,
Are you gonna put it out there for people to watch?
it should be out there now.
Into trading.
So yeah,
Yeah. So you remember like what we used to do, where we would all jump over to the YouTube?
we don't have to do that. I mean, they can,
I'm just.
but
Does that help? Like,
probably. I'm gonna tweet it, so that'll probably help. All right, so let's jump in here. So we'll start like we always start. And I'm streaming this on YouTube just as like a little sneak peek. So I'm trying to keep an eye on any comments there as well. Um, but yeah, let's rock it out. So let's jump over to our TPO chart where we start to tell our stories. So um, we've got an interesting deal going on here. So let me remove the rightmost. So this was
just
that.
just just FYI, when you're streaming on YouTube, we can't see it on here, so it might be beneficial to
You
go to
can
YouTube
hold
and
on.
watch it.
You can.
Oh well, then put it up.
There.
All right.
Yeah, my bad. I
Yeah, you're good.
forgot to share screen. Ha ha ha. All right, sweet. So this there's a couple days of balance in here that we're coming back into. So it kind of creates this interesting opportunity to some extent, and kind of, um, I would say, puts us in a little bit of a precarious, open, precarious opportunity here. Let me expand this apart and show you what I'm talking about. So you can see here that we've got these 3 days, balance barely overlapping, obviously not overlapping here. So this creates this as an island day. Well, we want to see this. Generally speaking, we'd like to see this island day be a resistance type spot where we possibly gauge for counter trend. So if we're short term trend up, we'd like to gauge for like counter trend here, right? But the interesting thing is we had island day, and then we left one on the low. So now like not a momentum and trend are both have shifted up. So on like the smaller time frames, we have secured a low. However, and so that brings us up here, right? And it's like, well, what are we going to do with this guy? We have an old balance area low here at 135.50. So that creates, a place to lean up in the chair, pay attention, see what's up. And I think if we melt this all back together, this paints a pretty good picture. So this area right here will probably hold some opportunity to watch offer side activity for a possible test down. Um, so coming out of the open, depending on when we open, this is the first place, unless we have an opening like no tick above the OR, above the 30-second. I would be looking to trade up into this balance area low 135, up into this 160 spot. And this would be a great spot, depending on where we open, we could snag out our trade for the day. There's enough meat on that bone. Get that 50-point move, scale through 50 points, and then be down to a rudder to see what happens. Do we complete this value rotation by holding 50.065 and going up to challenge 242 or 283, or do we get stifled in this peak above value from an island day, old balance area low, and have a difficult time here? So I think this is your first decision point. So that's from TPO balance and value. I would anticipate us holding inside of this balance area on a pullback, and in fact, a pullback opportunity for a long is a pretty good. It's kind of what I would most like to see. Um, going into, like, not just right off the open, but going into, like, on into the day. Love to see an opportunity for a pullback, garner a long, and then get that trade through this balance. One thing that we need to be on watch for is NQ is gapping above an opening drive down. So for that setup, we have a video on it if you want to watch it. But the idea is we test a drive lower, um, find bid, and then continue higher. So when we gap above an ODR, so this is the first 15 minutes secured the high of this day, and then we continue down. When we gap above those, which we traded through it, so it kind of softens the idea, but still looking for supportive opportunity to go up and challenge ideally into this other batch of opening drive down activity that we saw back here on the 14th. ES is in a almost the same spot. It's a little bit weaker. It'd be nice to see an RTH open for ES above 44.35.75. That would actually be the cleanest gap above an ODR play. So we gap above, if ES can move that far in the next 20 minutes, we open up here, pull back in, catch an opportunity to be long, to push up higher and test this local swing high here. So that's from a balance value perspective going into the day. If we jump into the daily chart, okay, we can see that from the leg high, which I think is probably the bullside target, from the leg high to the leg low, like for this move to be reoffered, we would like to see that offer come in this big old red box, right? So 60 to 80s, which is like 100 and something points. So how do you trade that, right? Well, we pick a couple key spots. So like 38.75 is a spot that I'll be leaned up in the chair because we have some conflicting modes of work. We have 15-minute ODR, balance and value pointing us one way, and then we have the idea of possibly being at the end of a daily. Like this was a swing low on the daily. We're coming up towards what could potentially be the end of a daily swing back up. And that daily swing would have not cleared the local swing high in theory, and would have reoffered cleanly inside of like a reasonable amount of that move down. So what we have to be a little cautious today because of all that, because it's a little bit conflicting modes of work, I guess you could say. So one set of work is kind of pushing us up. One set of work is kind of giving us a little caution to be mindful. If we drop though down to like a 4-hour picture, we get a little more clarity, right? We get a little clarity that we've tested into this, which this would be a reasonable reoffer place for this leg down. So we have this leg down coming up into a large area to possibly see sellers step back up. This 166 is another little spot, 160 to 180, that I would be paying close attention to. If we sweep this high and we don't find like initiative continuation, then that would be a point of caution for me to see not like the market unravel, right? But to have the opportunity to find bid here in this 480s to 15010, which is what lines up with the 15-minute ODR trade setup that we're talking about earlier. So we drop down to an hourly chart. It's a lot busier. My apologies. You can cut this guy out, right? We had a little local swing high here that we just tested above. So we can cut this guy out. And then that brings us into kind of this 1425, which was an interesting target overnight that I was looking at. Kind of if you think of the buyers that came in trying to make this a swing low from an hourly standpoint, and then just got totally melted on. The idea of the sellers that stepped in there being pretty aggressive, we can see here like um, picking about like the midpoint of that tug of war that happened in this area. If you look back across through here, just look at the price action around this 14 to 16 spot. So this was definitely an area of interest. Um, this puts us in the lens of like we broke this local some of these local swings, but this swing high right here is kind of the one, right? And so staying below 166 um, creates a bearish sentiment short term on the 1 hour, and then I think you have the chance to like rebid, the possibility of rebidding something here, similar to how yesterday looked, honestly. So if we just took like a little retracement tool and threw that up, just to get some parameters of like, okay, if we're going to reinitiate this position, what might that look like? And if buyers are going to re-up on their commitment to this move, I think a nice pullback into what is an hourly rebid potential, a 4 hour rebid potential, um, both make a lot of sense. That would run ahead of the daily rebid, but that's really what you would want to see if this is going to lock the swing low and if we're going to continue moving to the upside. So we actually would prefer to not see this deep pullback. We'd like to see the 4 hour or 1 hour step up and hold us in this continuing higher highs, higher lows perspective. We could drop down to the 30-minute and see kind of this little area lining up with the hourly. And so the same point, like this 15K, 1510, 1520, this area down here we want to watch for bid opportunity. So we could be a part of a test drive, so we could sell potentially off the open, which is what the trade setup for 15-minute ODR would call for. And if we sell off the open, we just need to be careful not to be too committed to that as we come down below this swing low here on the 30-minute. As we come below the 40s um, and into the basically the 40s. As we come down into this area, we just don't need to be in love with this to the point where we're adding or anything like that. I'd like to be, if I do take part in a short, if we get a setup, we'd like to be able to scale that position a little more aggressively than normal, so that when we get down into this area here, which lines up with our hourly and 4 hour picture, that we'd be able to begin looking to the smaller time frame to confirm a bid opportunity and then take part in that back up. That bid side trade that comes in off 15,000, say 20-ish area, 10 to 20-ish area, that bid that comes in needs to not only sweep overnight high, we need to sweep this 166 as well, in my opinion. So if we bid this and fail there, then we got to start looking to lower spots. So on the long side out of here, we either see another runner like yesterday, ultimately targeting through this 335, or we see a failed attempt to push higher, an opportunity to renegotiate that short for a second push down, and then gauge interest a little bit lower. There's liquidity to possibly be swept below euro lows around like 15K. So we'll have to see, like, that pullback below 15K makes a whole lot of sense for a place to gauge bid side. So sweep out euro participants, possibly grab some liquidity, and then continue continue to push higher. So that's what I'm looking for off of the open today. Again, looking for the opportunity to initially. I would like to see downside first, chance to maybe scalp some of that downside, or trade some of that downside down into this area. And then I'd like to be able to be nimble enough to, depending on what time it is and how much we are able to extract here, be able to gauge interest for longs and target this swing high here at 66. Um, Above that, we'll just renegotiate live and see what's what. Again, I think above that, we go back to the TPO and we go, okay, if we get above this 63, 66 spot, then the opportunity to continue much higher and test even the top of balance, have this balance area low to balance area high trade. We do have some news this morning to be a little bit mindful of. So if we jump off to the economic calendar real quick and take a look, we've got manufacturing PMI, flash services PMI. Uh, that's the two big ones at 9:45 Eastern, and then 10 o'clock new home sales, yeah, and then 10:30 crude oil inventories if you're an oil baron. Um, all right. So, any questions? Any thoughts? Um, Anything anybody needs? Banks, you have any thoughts? Um,
No, I mean I'm kind of looking at it the same way you are. I really want to see that 166 swing potential go.
yeah.
And I think if you're going to be looking for a short, at least initially, it's between like 166 and 190 in that area. I think if you get much above that, I think they try to go for that daily, which be up in 330s, 340s in that area. Because in reality, we talked about this last night after the market, but um, you know, if this is going to be the low and we're starting to transition structure on the smaller time frame, we had the 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, 30 minute, 1 hour, 4 hour kind of all change structure. Now the next goal is the daily, and beyond that, it's the weekly. So if you're looking at what we did last week is we swept the weekly lows, we swept the daily lows last week. So in rotation to look for liquidity, that's what we're going to be targeting.
Yep.
So unless offer can step up in this range that we're kind of talking about, then I assume that we'll probably just keep testing higher. Now you'll still have pullbacks, but in the grand scheme of things, if we cannot step on the reoffer, then we should continue to rebid this entire move. Now you
Yep.
might get a deeper pullback and something like that, but in essence, we're targeting liquidity higher. That's what
Yep.
this whole
Yep.
move has been about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just keep, like, the two things to keep in mind going into the opener. One, we're trying to set up an ODR on the cues, right? Like that setup is it's a squinty one, but it's there. ES on the other hand is gonna open inside this range. So the aggressive, like, I would be on watch for an aggressive move to the downside off the open. I would prefer that. Now I'm not gonna like ruin my trading day because of it, but I would prefer to see us have the chance to trade down out of the open, catch an opportunity for a bid, and then see some continuation. The flip side is, and so the only way I'm taking part in a downside trade is going to have to be incredibly clear setup, or like a no tick OR on one of the products, ES or NQ, and then after that, gauging interest to the buy side, because you know again we'd want to lean in the way that we've been moving up. We would want to lean into rebidding and on smaller time frames, so 15-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour zones of interest, key spots, failing to lose a swing low, 60, 70% retracement with, tools for execution confirming. Those are spots we want to pull the trigger on. We jump over here to our wonderful tiki chart. We can see that we are trying to set up a tiki right off these lows. So we're trying to set up a candle with no overlapping value. We did that on the break up from 15064 to 77. So that idea of an aggressive move down that I was looking for, like I feel like this is kind of a test, a pre-test of this area. So getting below this, like we need to be real careful catching the bid side. Now, fortunately for us, we have another clean spot down here that's untested in 15026. These seem to act like magnetic. This lines up with the rebid on the 4 hour or the 1 hour and 30 minute that we were looking at. So this is really a key spot for me to be able to gauge interest to the long side. I'll watch it here, especially depending on the open in 7 minutes, for maybe like an opportunity to scalp trade up and then kind of be off of that. But again, I would like to see this wash down to in here somewhere, get a chance, see another setup from a delta perspective or from a value imbalance perspective intraday, like we use this chart for. So, any other thoughts, Banks?
I was just looking at the cues. So we're probably going to gap up into a 4 hour reoffer on the cues.
Yeah.
Much above that is honestly the daily reoffer, which is much higher. So the 4 hour swing on the cues is up above 370. We're probably going to open up about 366 half. So we are going to have a decent gap up on that into a reoffer. So that kind of matches up with what I would expect on a pullback. Potentially try to fill the gap, and then find a rebid in that area for a push, for that swing high. So on the cues, the 4 hour swing high has not been taken, by the way.
Okay.
That's up at 370s. So
Okay.
that's something to keep in mind because that'll probably be at the same time that initiates will probably be the same time as the daily cue. I had to guess.
Yep.
Just kind of throwing out just the randomness, but again, like for us to take that liquidity on the cues, we've basically reoffered that whole way down on the cues. And the next point above us is probably up in the high to mid 370s or 370s.
Yeah.
So it's probably another 10 points higher on the cues. $10 higher.
Yeah.
On the cues.
That's a long
So,
ways. It's like hundreds of points.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so
for anybody watching on YouTube, I'm gonna end the stream here. This is just a little sneak peek into morning prep session with Vanta. Hope you enjoyed it and see you in the Discord. All right, for everybody else that is still in here.